The Church Solutions Podcast is happening again, and this is episode number 416. And my name is Phil Thompson.
And I'm Michael Gray.
So, Steve Lacy is in, what do they call that place? The happiest place on earth? Is that what they call it?
I think so. I think
Okay.
so.
All right.
Your
You just gave me a hand sign. What was it all about?
your audio actually is overdriving just a
Now it's
hair.
overdriving. All right. All right. I'll back off a little bit.
Hey,
It's
what would a tech company be if we didn't have tech issues, right?
exactly. All right. So is this any better? Does this sound a little better? Not quite as driving?
Yeah, it's not clipping on top.
Okay,
I
good.
think.
All right. Well, all right. So I increased the Zoom. We do these on Zoom, and I increased the volume of my microphone with the Zoom setting. But then I said, well, I'll get closer to the mic, and probably shouldn't have gotten closer to the
You
microphone.
doubled down.
I did, and then I went to the other extreme. All right. So we're going to talk about seven church trends that will disrupt 2024. And this is from Carrie Newhoff. And we'll get to that a little bit. But before we get to it, we have a webinar coming up February 13th. What's the title of the webinar, Michael?
I think it's something about love because it's the day before Valentine's, right?
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's not. No.
No, not a streaming company talking about how to find love.
Well, we could try. I mean, it might get some more. Yeah, we might get some more eyes on
Clickbait.
the thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
uh, now, though, we're actually going to talk about equipment recommendations for streaming video, and we're going to go over uh, some of our recommendations, but also we're going to kind of go a little bit beyond that and talk about, what should you consider and how do you make decisions on this, and so it's not just here, get this piece of equipment. We don't sell equipment. We're a streaming company, streamingchurch.tv, for those of you new to us. And we've been doing this podcast for many years, well over a decade. And we don't sell equipment per se, but we can recommend some stuff from our own experiences. Yeah. And we'll do that. But we're also going to talk a little bit about how to make a choice, how to really come up with that. So, having said that, it's February 13th. It's going to be 12 noon Eastern time, and you can sign up for free. It's going to be the domain, the place you need to go would be webinar.streamingchurch.tv. And you can sign up now, and you can actually look at some of our past webinars. We did like, what 10 or 11 webinars last year.
Yep.
And we've done some before that too.
Some good stuff. Yep.
Yeah, good guests. We've had a lot of guests on and over the past year and even beyond that. So anyhow, so sign up for that and you'll like it. It's only about 30 minutes long, and we'll do Q&A afterwards. So you get a chance to ask us questions. So you can stump Michael Gray, or try to.
That's not hard to do.
I don't know. You're a tough guy. So anyhow, so as we get into today's topic, as I started to mention before I was overmodulating, Steve Lacy's not with us. He's in the world's happiest place, which is, I guess, Disneyland. Is that what they call that? And,
I think that would be hell for me. I just don't like big crowds. I'm not a big crowd guy, so I'm not the happiest place for me.
Yeah, you
For
and
others,
I are,
though, I get it. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, you and I are in the same boat. And I did all that with my son and his
Me
friends,
too.
and
Yep.
so we've all done it. And Steve has got grandkids now, so that's why he's going. He's got grandkids.
He's on his second cycle of having wonderful fun with the kiddos.
Yeah, that's good. My wife can't wait to have grandkids, but I can. But we won't get into that because I know what it means, right? It means you don't have grandkids, right?
Not yet.
Not yet. So, yeah. I'm getting off track here. I mean, I know if we have grandkids, I know they're going to be over here all the time. So,
Sure.
which is what Steve, but they love it, and that's good for them. And look, I'm not against kids. So let's not get off track here as I'm taking us. So, Carrie Newhoff, he's a best-selling author. He's a leadership expert. He's actually an attorney. and he's very much involved in ministry, church work. Has a really very popular podcast. I don't remember the name of it, but it's Carrie Newhoff, and one of our guys that we know really well, Kenny Jong, knows him well, and so Kenny did an article at Church Tech Today. I think that's the name of the website, Church Tech Today. Kenny has a lot of good resources too, and we've had him on here before, and we've done webinars with him. And so this was a recent article that Carrie did a YouTube video on it, and so if you're interested in, just go to churchtechtoday.com. But I thought it would be good to talk a little bit about this, and you may not agree with this, and that's okay. But I think it would be good for you to at least keep an open mind. At least, if you might get something out of it, or at least might stimulate some thinking here. So he talks about how the trends are changing in 2024 when it comes to churches. And he talks about the different generations. And he talks about baby boomers, which I think started in 1945 or so, or 46. And I think the cutoff date is 64. And how boomers have been around for a long time in church leadership, but that's changing. We'll get into that. And then you got Generation X. Most people say they were born in 1995. 1995? Let me put my glasses on. Was that generation? I can't read.
I was going to say, if the last generation finished in 64, I'm assuming Gen X starts in 65, because I am.
Yeah, I'm really screwing this thing up, aren't I? But that's what I do. That's what I do. Yeah, Generation X, 65, 1965, 1980. I'm just giving you the scorecard here, all right? Millennials are born in 1981, roughly, to 1996. My son's right on the edge of that. Generation Z is 1997. Actually, my son's born 98. So 1997 to 2012 is Generation Z. I'm just doing this if you're keeping score at home. And we've yet to talk about Generation Alpha, which is born in 2010 to the present. But anyhow, he talks about some of these generations and how they are affecting trends. So let's just jump into it, shall we? Do you have any notes in front of you, Michael? Or are you like me, you just wing it? So what's the first trend that we want to talk about here?
The endangered stable church.
Yeah.
When I first saw the title, I was a little confused by it. I didn't necessarily understand where he was going, but I get it.
Yeah.
Stability is not very prominent in churches right now. Carrie quoted only 12% of churches are stable today. Only 12%.
So what is that? Yeah, only 12%. So what does that mean? Does that mean they're all falling apart, or what does that mean?
No, they're either trending up or trending down.
Yeah.
Only 12% are in the stable category. Everyone else is either going up or going down. And we're experiencing that with our clients, and we're getting folks that are scaling back staff or people adding staff. And so depending on how they're addressing the current culture of church world and our world in general, they may be trending up, or if they're not seeing the signs and adapting, they may be trending down.
Yeah. I was a real student of church growth for many years, and I was always taught that really if you're not growing, or if you're just stable in this sense, that it's probably not a good thing. I mean, there's always going to be seasons of growth in a church if it's healthy, and then there's seasons even that nothing's happening, even if you're healthy. But the way I was taught was you want to really see some numbers in some ways, not necessarily people showing up, but growth in your small group participation, growth in your finances, in your ministries that you do. And I'm getting off track here, but yeah. So his first point was trend one is that there's changes happening here, and his point was the old model is not very effective anymore.
Right, which has always been the case. Right. But today we're moving at the speed of light.
Yeah.
In the context of change. I mean,
Yeah.
we used to say if you didn't have a digital presence, and gosh, we've been saying that for what, 20 years, if you
Yeah.
don't have a digital presence.
Yeah, we have, yeah.
And there are a few that still don't, but most people have a digital presence. Now we could go into a whole nother podcast about whether it's good or not, but they at least have a digital presence. And the other two things that Carrie mentioned was the presence of virtual community building and adaptive content delivery. So those are three things that he pointed out that were key to being a growing and non-stagnant but growing organization.
Yeah. And of course, the biggest challenge is the older we get, and I'm talking about my generation and even yours. You're not that far behind me, but is that we don't like change. I mean, it's overall, most people, most humans, especially the older you get, the less you like change. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's the struggle, is that, people don't like change. I was working with a church, actually the last church I was working with, who really considered themselves progressive when I came on, and I probably came in too strong, but I was shocked how they just didn't want to change. They did
Yeah.
not want to change things that they were doing. They didn't want to change their systems, and the bottom line was they weren't very effective either. And so it's like, okay, I could see you don't want to change if things are going really well, but they weren't going well, and yet they still didn't want to change. So that's the biggest problem, is the stable church, is declining. And a lot of that is just because people are trying to hang on tooth and nail to what they've always known and what they always have wanted, and that's just not going to work. So good point that you made, Michael, about how we need to get out of that. All right, so should we move on to trend number 2?
Yes.
Millennials.
Millennials.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
mentioned those guys. Who are those guys?
Who are those guys? I know they were born in
81,
1946. No,
I believe you
1981.
said.
That's right.
I
Yeah.
believe you said 81.
Yeah. 81 to 1996, give or take a year,
Yep.
right? Yeah. Yeah. They're also known as Gen Y, I guess, but most people call them millennials.
Yep. Yep.
So anyhow, so what are they
So what
doing?
about millennials, Phil?
Yeah. Well, according to Kerry Newhoff, he may agree or disagree, but he says that they are the new core of the church. So boomers are beginning to step back for lots of reasons. In fact, he quoted, I think, a dip in the attendance. Used to be
Mm-hmm.
30%, and now it's down to 21%. And Gen Z is actually coming up 30%. So there's a change, there's a shift going there. And millennials, he's saying, are the new core of the church. And again, I just think that's common sense, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
stats prove it. And the stats bear witness to it, and it really makes sense. I mean, of course, they're going to begin to step up, if you let them. So the bottom line is again, it's change. Change is happening, and we need to accept the change, and we need to not just accept it, but we need to embrace it, and even help equip those of us who are old guys. We need to really help equip the millennials and help them continue to grow and take leadership.
Yeah. Yeah. So Kerry mentioned he mentioned social media. I don't think we need to dig deep into that.
Yeah,
Duh. If you're not involved and heavily involved as
yeah,
an organization, well, we know where you're at on the growth chart.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I think
You've
the
beaten
second
that
one, mobile
drum.
first approach, is one that in my head I know is correct. And back in the days when I taught that content, I taught people, hey, we're in a day of mobile first. You have to design your interfaces with mobile first, but still practicing that, I forget. I
Yeah,
build something out, I build it on a desktop where I got a nice big screen and then I make it all beautiful. And then I go, oh, wait, that won't work for a phone.
yeah,
It's in the wrong format. It needs to be portrait, not landscape, and it needs to have simplicity and all of the things that mobile needs. We have to make that shift to think first mobile
Mhm.
And then, secondly, everything else. Because if you look statistically, and almost every one of our churches that stream with us, if you look at their data on the back end, in most cases, tablet and phone substantially outnumber all the other devices. So they're streaming to phones and tablets, and they're building their stream and their content for, a computer screen or a laptop or whatever that may be. That's no longer the case. If you don't go small, then you missed it.
Yeah. And again, that's just more indication that the younger generation, that's what they look at. They look at their phones, they look at smaller devices. And so it's real important to really keep that in mind. All right, we're running out of time, or believe it or not. So number three,
Oh.
the third trend is that Generation Z is reshaping the church. And because of that, again, they're coming up the ladder. They're young and they're moving up the ladder. And this, of course, is people born in 1997 through 2012. These people are because they're in the church, they're they're having an influence. They're reshaping. And so one of the things that he encourages people to do is give them a seat on your leadership team. Equip
Mm-hmm.
them. They're not into hype. They're not into the stuff that maybe we thought was the right idea years ago. They're more into community. They're more into authenticity,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to give them opportunity. And you know what? I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I will. Let me see if I can reach myself here. But I've always felt when I was in leadership, I always wanted younger people. If I saw somebody in my congregation that was younger and fairly responsible, I wanted them to be more involved in
Mm-hmm.
things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
Yep.
there's a church. I'll get off a little bit of a rabbit trail here. There's a church in the I don't know when it was, the I guess it was the 80s, that came here to Tucson, and you're familiar with them, Calvary Chapel,
Mm-hmm.
which Calvary Chapel was famous on the West Coast and growing different places. And
Sure.
these guys, when they came, Robert Furrow, I used to play basketball with him. He's a senior pastor, still is. He was young at the time, and they just they drew a lot of young people, and
Mm-hmm.
they actually kind of blew my mind because they weren't doing things the way I was taught to do them. They weren't great at follow up. They weren't great at programs or different things like
Yeah.
that, but they attracted a lot of younger people. And then
Yeah.
they did create opportunities for the young people, like small groups, and really not necessarily small groups, but like youth groups and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
singles groups and all that. And they grew like crazy. And they there's a couple other churches that have spun off here in Tucson that were Calvary Chapel that came from Robert Furrow's group here in Tucson. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting off on the trail here, off the trail a little bit, but maybe I'm not, because the bottom line is they were all young, and so they just took the wheel of
Yeah.
their church leadership. And because they were involved, and they weren't Generation Z back then, but they were younger, and there were some older people there, but the older people helped them
Yeah.
uh, get a seat in the leadership. The older people use their wisdom and knowledge from their experiences to help guide them. And I
Yeah.
think that's one of the reasons Calvary Chapel of Tucson, there's several Calvaries here. I think it's one of the reasons why it's been so successful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I
yeah,
mean, I don't always want to harken everything back to business because it's not always good, but it is true. If you raise up young leaders, eventually, if they have that DNA for the next generation and the next generation and the next generation, you have strength and organizational strength that is going to span well beyond you. And we miss that often.
we do. We do. And again, part of it's because we don't like change. We like the way things are. We're afraid the younger people are going to make mistakes, which they will. But we all made mistakes. All right, let's if unless you're okay with this, let's move on.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Yep.
what are we at? Trend
Time
number
to
four.
go, time to
Yeah,
go digital with discipleship.
yeah. So this is one I think that a lot of people buck.
Yeah.
Trend four is discipleship is going digital.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's no longer optional. but it's actually, uh, as you were saying just a little earlier, it's critical that churches take advantage of digital now. The
Yep.
technology's there, take advantage of
Yeah.
it.
There's so many different tools that are literally at our fingers for helping people with discipleship. I mean, the Bible app has transformed how many people have the Bible in their hand and can do daily readings that are help building their faith. Um, so people are often in the younger generation, Gen Z and Gen Y, they're very self-serve. I mean, what I mean is they want to consume it on their own pace, on their own time, and don't necessarily want to come to the building and meet one-on-one with somebody to do the discipleship. So adapting to that, I would say it's a little dangerous to go 100% that, because I think you always need to be. This is another both and. Uh, so if you want to do it digital, which is the right thing to do, because it's how people consume discipleship content right now. You can do that in a group environment. You can do that individually. You can do it one-on-one, but you can still, for people who prefer, have an option to come into the building and somebody's leading a discipleship group, walking them through growing in their faith.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. Both slash and, uh, to quote Jason Moore, the hybrid approach definitely is something that I think always needs to be a part. But apps, in fact, we're actually developing an app. I don't know if we're allowed to say this because it's kind of top secret, but we're developing an app that is going to really help people in this same area.
Yeah.
Discipleship, devotions,
Yep.
interactivity with
Yep.
your small groups or other
And it
groups in your church.
and it's sermon based.
Yeah.
So yeah, the pastor talked about faith, and so then your Bible study or your group this week is going to talk about faith, and we're going to go deeper, and we're going to dig in and really get to the meaty part with more scripture and more everything to create a disciple environment. Now, that can be 100% digital, it can be 100% live, or it can be both and, which is the right mix for today.
Yeah. And hats off to Steve Lacy with this idea and developing it. But yeah, the idea is, you can work on this during the week, and then, when you do meet with your small group in person, you've got there's a little more interactivity there, and you're more prepared and all that. But yeah, so discipleship is going digital, and I wholeheartedly agree with that on trend number 4. All right, moving along here. We're running out of time. Trend
Yep.
five. Trend five. Partisan politics doesn't bring long-term growth. Um, and of course, it's 2024. The elections are going on. The
We're in an election
primaries.
year.
Yep.
So there's going to be a lot said
Yeah.
about whichever side you point towards or whatever.
Yeah. And his point, and again, I personally agree with this, is that, yeah, you're going to get people, if you have more of an emphasis on one side, you're going to get people that, embrace that. But his idea is like, hey, it's not going to be long term. You'll get them for a little while, but they're not necessarily going to stay. So his answer to that, which I again agree on, is you want to focus on the teachings of Jesus. You want to focus on promoting unity as much as you can, being inclusivity. Is that the word? How you say that? You want to be inclusive.
Yes.
You want to bring people together, accept people, even if they have differences. It's one thing I liked about one church I was with, is that we really did embrace differences. It was okay if you had a different idea about things, different politics, different political thing. It was okay. We wanted to focus on the teachings of Jesus and really promote that. So partisan politics doesn't bring
Yep.
long-term growth. I agree with that.
Yep.
I think that's
I
probably
do
true.
too.
Yeah.
I do too. It's something that we are, Carrie mentioned, we're in an echo chamber. Everybody's heard that term, that whatever we believe, we see more of it. on social platforms, whatever, and it becomes just this drumming echo chamber
Yeah,
that we and a lot of people want to get off the hamster wheel
that's
and
right.
say they don't want to come to a church and hear more echo chamber. They want to hear the truth and the good news of Jesus.
Yeah,
And that is always available and always the most right message you can deliver to draw people to God, because um, whichever side of whoever's aisle you're on, it doesn't matter in the larger scale of uh, what do we know about Jesus and how can we be more like Jesus?
exactly. Yeah, that's exactly true. That's the alternative that these younger people are looking for. And that's what I believe we need to keep going on. All right, trend number 6. Uh, here's our favorite, one of our favorites, AI. AI, artificial intelligence. I know some people are cringing right now. AI
Hmm.
is becoming the norm, and yeah, we've beat this drum for quite a while now.
Sure.
But you can't stop it. It's coming, and so his, and look, we understand there's church leaders are split on this. I mean, there are
Mm,
stats out
very.
there that church
Yeah.
leaders are like very concerned about, and I don't have a problem with people being concerned about it. They really do need to do some research on it, um, because I think that really we need to address the questions, and that was the solution here to this trend. AI is becoming the norm. People are upset about it, not just people in ministry, but even people feeling like they might lose their jobs.
Yeah. Sure.
Not just ministry people, but people other places. They're concerned. It's going to take my job away. So what do you need to do? You've got to, if you're a leader in your church, you've got to address those questions. You've
Sure.
got to address those concerns and really emphasize, if you really understand AI correctly, it really can lead to helping you in ministry if you do it
Hmm.
right and you don't just, I mean, and we've talked about this, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
don't want to.
Kenny and Carrie are very big on having a written policy for your organization. Here's how we address AI. And Phil, you know as well as I do, this is the same thing. You alluded to the fact that we don't like to change. So go back to when the internet came about.
Yeah,
It's the worst thing ever. It's gonna destroy the world, and then it didn't. And then websites. Can't have a website on the web because other people have naughty ones, and we can't be in the same place at the same time. Whatever argument, there was always this divisive argument on new technology because people hate change. So all I would say at this point is do not don't allow the church echo chamber of what AI is and isn't shape what you think about AI. Do some real research, try some of the free tools and see how it works. And it's not like a magician pulling a bunny out of a hat. There is some real useful copywriting technology, etc. And as far as people losing their jobs, that's always going to happen. New things, new industry, new machines that do different things is going to change the work environment. And we can weep and cry and everything else in the world, but the world is changing and we have to continue to adapt.
yeah, that's so true. I can remember, as you know, I was in Christian broadcasting for a long time, and we used to have a program from a guy by the name of J. Vernon McGee. And
Hmm.
I don't know if you ever heard him or know of him, but
Hmm.
he was around for a long time, and he would go. I forget the name of the program, but he literally would just go through the Bible, and it just. And even after he died, the tapes kept coming because he would just keep going through the Bible and all that. And he told the story one time. And this guy, when you heard him, he had kind of a, I don't know if he was from Texas or where he was from, but he kind of had that. He kind of had the. I think those out to lunch. He kind of had that kind of a style of conversation. So he kind of sounded old, but he told the story in his Baptist church, probably in the 1950s, how they decided to light up their sign. They decided to have a sign that was lit, and he got all sorts of flack from people because they didn't
A
like the
lighted
fact
sign.
that he had a lighted sign.
You're going to go straight to hell if you have a lighted sign at your
Yeah.
church.
Yeah, but he tells that story, and again, it just goes back to what you were saying is people don't like change and they get freaked out. And I have no idea why people didn't want their sign lit, but I can't imagine why wouldn't you? But so I guess what I'm saying is it's very true what you're saying, and is there's change coming, and yeah, people it means changes in jobs, but there's also other jobs that are created from technology, and
Absolutely.
so you got to keep that in mind. So AI is becoming the norm. It's here, folks, whether you like it or not, and it can really add. So as a leader, you need to embrace those questions people have. All right. So as we wrap up here, going a little over time, trend number 7: a new kind of mega church pastor is emerging, and most of these are millennials. And again, I just think that's common sense. People
Yeah.
are coming up the ladder, and he believes that they are actually doing a good job. They're promoting technology. They're highlighting community building.
Yeah.
They're focusing more on church health instead of just church growth.
Yep.
And so it's a shift. There's a shift that's coming from purely a growth focused tech deal to really nurturing deeper, more meaningful connections and the overall well-being of the church community. So I don't really have a lot of experience when it comes to mega churches anymore. But this guy is in touch with, he's got his finger on the
Yeah.
pulse. Makes sense.
Yeah. Who's the big speakers that people are pulling up online and watching and listening to, etc.? And if you think about it, it totally makes sense, Phil, because this is a generation that grew up on technology. So they don't think about, oh, we need to add technology. Technology is just
Right.
how they live. And so that's being brought into, as we talked about discipleship and everything else, in a way that has never happened before, that is more engaging to the next generation and the next generation. That'll always be the case as people grow up with technology versus us who've had to learn it all along the way. Phil and I, believe it or not, started out when you actually had a phone attached to a wall in a
That's right.
house. I
That's
know,
right.
it's crazy, crazy, but it really was like that. But my kids have grown up and never known a day that there wasn't cell phone technology.
Yeah.
So therefore, cell phone, it's just part of their anatomy, and they don't think about it. They do life that way.
Yeah. Yeah. What's a phone booth? Well, I remember we used to
Phone booth,
have
yeah.
to
A
get
phone
into
booth. What are you talking about?
I needed 10 cents to make a call on a phone booth. What's a phone booth?
Phone
And are
booth,
they?
is that something you put your phone in your to keep it from breaking?
Yeah,
I
exactly. Yeah, yeah. All right. So it's all about change. All right. So we've been going on here, but I hope, just take a look. You can go to churchtechtoday.com, Kenny Jong's deal, or you can search for Kerry Newhoff. I think his name is spelled Niewhof. I don't have my glasses on.
Nieuwhof.
Yeah, Kerry Newhoff. You can look for his stuff. He's got really good stuff.
Yes.
But
And
but
that is the name of his podcast as well.
okay.
It's just the Kerry Newhoff podcast.
Yeah.
It's got some great content on there. Kerry is very
Yeah.
insightful, and we appreciate him sharing his wisdom with us. And this was a great article. You need to read it.
Yeah, it is. And again, you may not agree with everything he says, but I don't know about you, but I just think it's good sometimes to get a different point of view from people, and think a little more about it. Get out of your box, if I can say
Hmm.
that, and really look and see what other people have and investigate it. Think about it, and do some research of your own, and see if you feel like it's true or not. All right, so we're out of time. We took some time, Michael. Well, you added a lot to this. I really appreciate what you added to this.
I appreciate you inviting me in. I'm usually pretty having my head buried and doing my best introvert. But occasionally I like to come out and come out of my box
Yeah.
and chat you guys up on the podcast. It's
All right.
always a lot
Well,
of fun.
Yeah, it always is. And folks, we appreciate you spending some time with us today on the Church Solutions podcast. Be sure and check out the stuff we offer at streamingchurch.tv and sign up for the webinar coming up. You'll see that there in the resources. And hey, let us know what you think about this podcast, what we've been doing. Give us a rating, subscribe to it if you like us. I always want to hear from you. All right, we're done. We're out of time. Again, thank you, Michael Gray, and thank you, folks, for spending some time with us today on the Church Solutions podcast. My name is Phil Thompson. Please take care of yourselves and each other. We'll catch you again on another episode.